The sun was burning bright and hot when Sarah Thorne arrived at the riverside auction yard. The dust from the roads had covered her old truck like a brown blanket. She parked at the edge of the lot, away from the other vehicles. Sarah did not want people to see her face. She did not want anyone to know she was here. The auction yard was a sad place. It was a large area with many wooden stalls and fences. Horses stood in the heat, waiting for their turn to be sold. Some of them looked strong and healthy, but most of them looked tired and broken. The ground was dry and dusty. There was no grass. There was only dirt and stones and the smell of animals and sweat. Sarah walked through the yard slowly. She was a tall woman with dark hair that was starting to turn gray. Her hands were rough from years of hard work on her farm. Her face was thin and tired. She had not smiled in a long time. 3 years ago, her husband had died. 2 years ago, she lost her farm because she could not pay the bank. Now she lived in a small house with only a few horses and very little money. She had nothing left to lose. This was important. This made her brave in a way that scared her. All around her, men in hats were walking between the stalls. They looked at horses like a shopkeeper looks at things for sale. They checked the teeth of the horses. They looked at their legs. They talked in loud voices about which horse was good and which horse was bad. Some of the men had money. Some wanted to become rich by selling horses. None of them looked at the animals with love. They only looked at them with dollar signs in their eyes. Sarah had come to this auction for one reason. She wanted to find a young horse that no one else wanted. A horse that had no value to other people. A horse that had been forgotten. She did not have money to buy a famous horse or a healthy horse. But she had something else. She had time. She had patience. She had a barn that was empty and waiting. As she walked past the stalls, Sarah saw many horses. There was a brown Marais that was very old. There was a black horse with a bad leg. There was a white horse that looked mean and dangerous. Sarah shook her head at each one. These horses needed something she could not give them. Then she came to a stall at the back of the yard. This stall was in the shadow of a large wooden building. The sun did not shine on it much. The stall looked dark and cold. Inside the stall, Sarah saw an old Marais standing alone. The Marais was gray and very thin. Her bones showed through her skin. She was not healthy. She would not sell for much money. But behind the old Marais, Sarah saw something else. There was a small foal hidden in the darkness. The foal was very young, maybe only a few months old. It was small and thin like a ghost. Its coat was dull and patchy. Some parts of its hair were missing. The foal looked like it had not eaten well, or had not been cared for properly. It was the most forgotten animal Sarah had ever seen. The foal was standing in the corner of the stall, trying to hide. It was not moving. It was barely even breathing. It was as if the foal did not want to exist. As if the world had already decided that it was not important enough to live. Sarah stopped walking. She stood very still and quiet. She looked at the foal for a long time. No one else was looking at this stall. No one else seemed to see the foal. The auctioneer had not even marked it down on his list. It was invisible. It did not matter. Sarah moved closer to the fence. She did not move fast. She did not make any noise. She just walked slowly, like she was part of the dust and the heat. She wanted the foal to know that she was not a threat. When she reached the fence, Sarah looked down at the foal. The foal's eyes were empty and dark. They were the eyes of an animal that had learned not to hope. Sarah had seen those same eyes when she looked in the mirror, back when she lost her farm, and her husband had been dead for only 1 year. Sarah understood what this foal felt. She understood the loneliness. She understood what it meant to be forgotten. She understood the feeling of waiting for something that would never come. "Hello," Sarah whispered to the foal. Her voice was very soft and quiet. "Nobody is looking at you. Nobody sees you here. Nobody cares about you. But I see you. I see you right now." The foal did not move. It did not look at her. But then, very slowly, something changed. The foal turned its head. It looked directly at Sarah's face. For just 3 seconds, the foal's eyes were not empty anymore. For 3 seconds, there was something alive in those eyes. Recognition, understanding, a question that had no words. Then the foal looked away again. It turned back to the corner and hid behind its mother's body once more. But Sarah knew. She had seen something in that moment. She had seen a spark. She had seen that this small, broken, forgotten foal was still alive inside. It still felt things. It still wanted to survive. It just needed someone to believe in it. Sarah looked around the auction yard. People were standing in a group, getting ready to start selling the horses. A man with a loud voice was preparing to call out the prices. Sarah had no money. She had saved only $500 for this day. She could not afford a healthy horse or a strong horse. But maybe she could afford this one. Maybe no one would bid on this forgotten foal. Maybe she could take it home. Sarah walked to the auction office. She stood in line with other people who wanted to bid. When it was her turn, she gave her name and asked to be on the list. The man behind the desk did not look at her face. He did not care who she was. He only cared about the money. Sarah waited for hours. Horse after horse was brought out and sold. The prices went up and down. Men shouted and waved their hands. Some horses sold for a lot of money. Some sold for only a little bit. Then finally, near the end of the day, the old gray mare was brought to the front. The auctioneer started calling out the price. People bid against each other. But then he stopped suddenly. He looked at his list again. "We have the mare," he said in his loud voice. "And we have one foal with her. That foal is not listed. It has no papers. It has no name. Do you want the foal too, or just the mare?" The crowd was quiet. No one was interested in a foal with no papers and no name. Sarah raised her hand. "I want the foal," she said. Her voice was shaking. The auctioneer looked at her with surprise. "You want the foal? Just the foal, without the mare?" "Yes," Sarah said. "Just the foal." The auctioneer laughed. It was a mean laugh, like he thought Sarah was crazy or stupid. "All right," he said. "Let's start the bidding for the foal. Do I have $50? Anyone? Anyone at all?" No one moved. No one raised their hand. $25? He called out. Still nothing. $10 for this worthless animal? Sarah raised her hand. "I bid $10, she said. "Sold." The auctioneer shouted, banging his hammer on the table. To the lady in the back, $10 for the forgotten foal. "Best waste of money I have seen all week." The crowd laughed. Sarah did not care. She had bought the foal. She had bought something that nobody else wanted. She had bought hope.
Sarah brought the foal home in the back of her old truck. The journey took 3 hours. The foal stood quietly in the darkness, not fighting, not running. It seemed like the foal had given up on life a long time ago. It did not cry or kick. It just stood there and accepted whatever was happening. Sarah called the foal Ghost because it looked like something that was not quite real. It looked like a dream that had forgotten how to be alive. The first week was the hardest. Ghost would not eat much food. The foal would not drink water. It would just stand in the corner of the barn stall and stare at nothing. Sarah tried everything. She brought hay. She brought grain. She brought fresh water in a clean bucket. But Ghost did not want any of it. Sarah sat with the foal for hours each day. She did not talk much. She knew that words were not what this animal needed. What Ghost needed was to know that someone cared. What Ghost needed was to feel that it was safe. "I know you were scared," Sarah would whisper while sitting on the hay. "I know you think nobody loves you. I know you think nobody wants you. But I am here now, and I am not going anywhere. I promise you that." Day by day, something very small began to change. On the 5th day, Ghost ate a little bit of grain. On the 7th day, the foal drank some water. On the 10th day, Sarah saw Ghost's eyes become a little bit brighter. Not much brighter, just a little, but was enough to give Sarah hope. By the end of the second week, Ghost was eating better. The foal was moving around the stall more. Sarah started to brush the foal's coat gently with a soft brush. Ghost did not like it at first, but slowly, the foal learned to enjoy the feeling of being taken care of. 3 weeks after Sarah brought Ghost home, something amazing happened. Sarah was working in the barn early in the morning, before the sun came up. She was feeding the other horses. She heard Ghost making a sound, a soft, nickering sound, like the foal was calling out to her. When Sarah turned around, Ghost was looking directly at her. The foal's eyes were different now. They were no longer empty. They had light in them. They had life. "You are waking up," Sarah said, smiling for the first time in many months. "You are coming back to life." In the 4th week, Sarah took Ghost out of the barn for the first time. She did not put a rope on the foal. She did not use any tools or equipment. She just walked, and Ghost followed her like they had always been together. They walked through the fields behind Sarah's house. Ghost's legs were growing stronger every day. The foal's coat was becoming shiny and beautiful. The patchy, dull hair was being replaced by sleek, dark fur that shone like copper in the sunlight. But something else was also happening. Ghost was starting to show a power that surprised Sarah. One morning, when Sarah opened the barn door, Ghost ran out into the field at a speed that was impossible for such a young foal. The foal ran in circles, its legs moving like lightning. It ran so fast that Sarah could barely see it clearly. When Ghost finally stopped, the foal was not tired. It was excited. It was alive in a way that Sarah had never seen before. "You are special," Sarah whispered to the foal. "I knew it when I first saw you. I knew there was something different about you." That same day, something happened that changed everything. Sarah was in the field with Ghost when she heard a truck coming up the long dirt road to her house. This was unusual. Sarah did not have many visitors. She lived far away from town, and most people did not know she existed. The truck was old and broken. It moved slowly and carefully like it was in pain. When it stopped, a man got out. He was very old, maybe 80 or 90 years old. His face was weathered and brown from the sun. His body was thin and weak. He was coughing, and he had to hold onto the truck door to stay standing. "Sarah Thorne," the man called out. His voice was rough and quiet. "Yes," Sarah said. She was confused. She did not know this man. "Who are you?" "My name is Jacob Miller," the old man said. He was breathing heavily, like even speaking took all his strength. "I need to talk to you about something very important. Can we sit down?" Sarah helped the old man to the porch. She brought him water. Jacob drank it slowly, then sat very still for a long time. He looked very sick. Sarah could tell that he was dying. Everyone in town knew about Jacob Miller. They said he had cancer. They said he only had a few months left to live. "Why did you come here?" Sarah asked gently. Jacob looked at her with eyes that were very clear and very sad. "I came because of the foal," he said. "The foal you bought at the riverside auction. Did you buy it?" Sarah felt her heart begin to beat very fast. "Yes." "How do you know that?" Jacob took a long breath. "Because I've been waiting for someone to find that foal. I have been waiting for 15 years. And now you have found it. And I need to tell you the truth about what that animal really is." Sarah sat down slowly. "What do you mean?" "That foal," Jacob said, pointing toward Ghost in the field, "is not just any foal. It should not exist. It should not be alive. But it is alive, and it carries something inside it that is very important. Something that is worth a lot of money. Something that people would kill for." "I do not understand," Sarah said. Her hand was shaking now. Jacob coughed for a long time before he could speak again. "There was a horse," he said. "A mare. A legendary mare. The most beautiful and fastest horse that was ever born in these mountains. That mare belonged to the royal family. You know the family I am talking about? The family that built this town? The family that owned half of the land around here." Sarah nodded. She had heard of the royal family, but she did not know much about them. "Well," Jacob continued, "that mare was the most valuable animal in the entire territory. People would have paid anything to own her. But the royal family did not want to share her. They wanted to keep her secret. They wanted to keep her bloodline pure." Jacob paused and looked directly at Ghost in the field. "That foal is the daughter of that legendary mare," Jacob said slowly. That foal was born in secret. I was the only person who knew about it. The mare was supposed to be destroyed. The family wanted no proof that she ever existed. But I could not do it. I could not kill such a beautiful animal. So I hid her. And when she became pregnant, I hid the foal too. Sarah felt like the world was spinning. What are you saying? I am saying, Jacob said, that you have bought something that is worth more money than you have ever seen in your entire life. I am saying that there are people who will do anything to find that foal. I am saying that foal is in danger. And I'm saying that I came here because I'm going to die soon, and I needed to know that someone good would take care of it. Someone who would love it more than money. Someone like you. The wind was blowing across the field. Ghost was running again, faster and faster, like the foal was dancing with the wind. Sarah looked at Ghost, and then she looked back at Jacob. What do I do? She asked quietly. That, Jacob said, is the secret you have to keep safe. That is what your heart will have to decide. 3 days after Jacob left her ranch, Sarah was working in the barn when she heard the sound of an engine. It was not Jacob's old truck. This was a new, expensive car. It was shiny and black, and it looked like something that did not belong in this poor, dusty place. Sarah's heart began to beat very fast. She knew why they had come. Jacob must have told someone, or maybe the royal family had found out. Either way, they had come for Ghost. 2 men got out of the car. They were wearing suits, expensive suits made of fine cloth. They were not farmers. They were not ranchers. They were businessmen from a city. Behind them came a third man, older than the other 2, carrying a leather case and papers in his hands. The oldest man walked directly to Sarah. He did not smile. He did not say hello. He just started speaking. Sarah Thorne, he said. His voice was cold and hard, like a knife made of ice. Yes, Sarah said. She could hear her own voice shaking. My name is Mr. Harrison, the man said. I'm a lawyer. I represent the royal family. We have reason to believe that you are in possession of a horse that belongs to us legally. A foal. We have come to collect it. Sarah felt the ground move under her feet. Everything was happening very fast now. Everything was real. I bought that foal in auction, Sarah said. I have papers. I have proof. Mr. Harrison smiled, but it was not a kind smile. Those papers are worthless, he said. The foal was sold illegally. It was a horse that should have been destroyed according to the agreement between the royal family and the auction house. You bought something that was never for sale. One of the other men stepped forward. The family is willing to offer you compensation, he said. We will give you $50,000 for the foal. That is a very generous amount of money. More money than you have ever seen in your life. Sarah felt her knees become weak. $50,000. That was enough money to fix her house. That was enough to buy food for a whole year. That was enough to stop being poor and broken. That was enough to save her life. But Ghost was in the barn. Ghost was alive because Sarah had loved it. Ghost had come back to life in Sarah's arms. No, Sarah said. The word came out very small and quiet. No, Mr. Harrison said. He looked surprised and angry at the same time. You are refusing? Yes, Sarah said. And this time her voice was stronger. Ghost is mine. I bought it. I saved it. I love it. I will not sell it. The lawyer opened his leather case and pulled out a stack of papers. Then I am sorry to tell you that we will take legal action. We will take you to court. We will prove that you stole from the royal family, and the foal will be taken from you anyway. But this time, you will also lose your house and all your money. You will owe us legal fees and damages. You will be ruined. Sarah's hands were shaking now. She was poor. She had no money for lawyers. She had no power against a family as rich and powerful as the royal family. She understood that they could destroy her. They could take Ghost. They could take everything. I need to think, Sarah said quietly. You have until tomorrow morning, Mr. Harrison said. After that, we will have no choice but to begin legal proceedings. We will come back tomorrow at 8 o'clock. You can either give us the foal, or you can say goodbye to everything you own. The 3 men turned and walked back to their car. They got in and drove away, leaving Sarah standing alone in a cloud of dust. Sarah went into the barn and found Ghost. The foal was in the stall, eating hay. The foal looked so peaceful, so innocent, so full of life. Sarah put her arms around Ghost and held the foal close to her chest. What do I do? Sarah whispered. What do I do? That night, Sarah did not sleep. She sat in the barn all night long, her arms around Ghost. She thought about her choices. She thought about money. She thought about survival. She thought about love. She could take the $50,000. She could fix her house. She could eat well. She could be comfortable and safe. She could stop being poor. But Ghost would be taken away. Ghost would become a prize. Ghost would be owned by rich people who only cared about money and power. Ghost would be locked in a beautiful stable, forced to run races or breed more horses. Ghost would never be free. Ghost would never know what it meant to run wild under the open sky. Sarah thought about what Jacob had told her. Jacob had kept the secret for 15 years because he could not kill such a beautiful animal. Jacob had come to her in the last days of his life to make sure that Ghost would be loved, not owned. Jacob had believed that some things were more important than money. At dawn, Sarah made her decision. She did not go to sleep. Instead, she packed a bag with food and water. She put a blanket and a rope in the bag. She walked to Ghost's stall and opened the gate. "Come," she said to the foal. "We are leaving." Ghost followed Sarah out of the barn and into the early morning light. They walked together across the fields, away from the house, away from the road, toward the mountains. The sun was rising behind them, painting the sky orange and red. They walked for many hours. The mountains grew closer and closer. Sarah was heading toward the wild lands, the places where no one could reach them, the places where no fence could hold them, the places where horses could run free and no one could claim ownership. At noon, the wind began to blow. The sky turned gray. Thunder started to rumble in the distance. A storm was coming, a big storm that would cover their tracks and hide them from anyone who tried to follow. Sarah and Ghost kept walking. The storm grew closer. The wind grew stronger. Lightning flashed across the sky like angry fire. When they reached the mountain pass, Sarah stopped. They were in a place of rocks and wild grass. There were no fences here. There were no people here. There was only freedom and danger and wildness. Sarah looked at Ghost. The foal was breathing hard, its sides moving up and down. The foal's eyes were bright and alive, looking at the mountains ahead, looking at freedom. Sarah understood something in that moment, something that Jacob had been trying to tell her. Some creatures are not meant to be owned. Some creatures are not meant to be caged. Some creatures are born to be free. "I love you," Sarah said to Ghost. "I love you so much that I have to let you go." She removed the rope from Ghost's neck. She stepped back. "Run," she whispered. "Be free. Be wild. Be the legend that you were always meant to be." Ghost looked at her for one moment. Just one moment. In that moment, Sarah saw understanding in the foal's eyes. She saw gratitude. She saw love. Then Ghost turned and ran toward the mountains. The foal ran faster and faster, disappearing into the storm, becoming part of the wind and the rain and the wild lands. Sarah stood alone as the storm crashed down around her. Rain fell on her face like tears. Thunder roared like the voice of God. And in that moment, Sarah understood what true love really meant. It meant knowing when to let go. It meant choosing the freedom of someone you love more than your own survival. It meant silence. And in that silence, love lived forever. Sarah walked down from the mountains in the darkness. The storm had passed. The rain had stopped. The lightning had gone away. But the cold was still there, and the wind was still blowing through the high passes. She had walked for hours after Ghost disappeared into the wild. She had no idea what time it was. She had no idea how far she had come. She only knew that she was walking away from everything she had ever owned. She was walking toward nothing. Her feet hurt. Her clothes were wet and torn. Her face was scratched from the rocks and branches. But her heart was at peace. For the first time in 3 years, since her husband had died, Sarah's heart felt light and free. When she finally reached her small house, it was early morning. The sun was just beginning to come up over the fields. Sarah could see her barn in the distance. She could see her fences. She could see all the things she owned in this world. But they did not matter anymore. Sarah walked into her house and sat down on a chair. She did not cry. She did not feel sad. She felt something different. She felt clean, like all the broken pieces inside her had been washed away by the storm. She sat there all day long, not moving, not eating, not drinking. She just sat and listened to the silence. The silence of the house. The silence of the barn. The silence of a life that had changed forever. At 8 o'clock in the evening, a car pulled up to her house. It was the same black car. Mr. Harrison and his 2 men got out. They looked angry. They looked like they had not slept. Mr. Harrison walked to the door and knocked. Sarah did not move. She did not answer. She just sat at her chair and listened to the knock on her door. "Sarah Thorne," Mr. Harrison shouted. "Open this door. We have a court order. We have the right to enter your property." Sarah still did not move. She did not say anything. She just sat in the silence. The men broke down the door and came inside. They looked around the empty barn. They looked in every stall. Ghost was not there. The foal was gone. Mr. Harrison's face turned red with anger. "Where is it?" he shouted. "Where is the foal?" Sarah looked at him calmly. "It is gone," she said quietly. "Gone where?" the lawyer demanded. "You sold it? You gave it away?" "No," Sarah said. "I set it free." The second man stepped forward. "Do you understand what you have done?" he said. "You have destroyed something worth millions of dollars. You will be prosecuted. You will go to prison." Sarah looked at all 3 men. She saw their anger. She saw their greed. She saw their fear that they had lost something valuable. But she did not feel afraid of them anymore. "You can take everything," Sarah said in a quiet voice. "You can take my house. You can take my land. You can take my horses. You can put me in prison. But you cannot take what I did. You cannot undo what happened. Ghost is free now, and nothing you do will change that." Mr. Harrison's face turned even darker. "You will regret this," he said. "You will spend the rest of your life regretting this decision." "No," Sarah said, and for the first time in 3 years, she smiled. "I will not regret this. This is the only thing I have done right since my husband died. This is the only thing that matters." The men left. They took Sarah's house. They took her land. They took her horses. They took everything she owned through lawyers and courts and legal papers. By the end of the month, Sarah had nothing left. She owned nothing. She had no home, but she had something else now. She had peace. Sarah moved into a small room above the general store in town. She got a job working as a cleaner in the store, sweeping floors and organizing shelves. She made just enough money to eat and sleep. She had no extra. She had no comfort, but she had something worth more than money. She had a clear conscience. Every evening, after her work was done, Sarah would walk to the edge of town and look toward the mountains. She would stand there in silence and think about Ghost. She wondered if the foal had survived in the wild. She wondered if Ghost had found other horses. She wondered if Ghost was happy. And in her silence, Sarah could feel Ghost somewhere out there, in the mountains, in the wind, in the freedom of the wildlands. Sarah could feel that the foal was alive and free and happy. One day, about a year after she had released Ghost, something strange happened in town. Old Thomas, a rancher who lived in the foothills, came into the store where Sarah worked. He was excited and talking loudly. He was telling everyone about something amazing he had seen. "I saw a wild horse up in the high passes," Thomas said. "The most beautiful horse I have ever seen in my entire life. It was running with a herd of wild mustangs, leading them like it was a queen. The horse was so fast, so powerful, so perfect. It did not act like other wild horses. It was special. It was like watching a ghost run through the wind." Sarah's heart began to beat very fast. She stopped sweeping the floor. She listened to every word. "Where did you see it?" she asked quietly. "Up in the mountain passes," Thomas said. "Far beyond the ranch lands. In the wild territory. I tried to follow it, but it was too fast. It just disappeared like magic." Sarah smiled. She did not say anything more. She just went back to sweeping the floor. But inside her heart, something was singing. Ghost was alive. Ghost was free. Ghost was exactly where it was meant to be. A few months later, Sarah was walking through the mountains on her day off. She had started hiking to the places where she and Ghost had walked together. She was not looking for Ghost. She knew that the foal had moved on, but she liked to walk where they had walked together. One afternoon, as she was standing on a high ridge looking out at the valleys below, Sarah heard a sound. It was the sound of hooves on stone. It was the sound of a horse running fast across the rocks. Sarah turned around, and for just a moment, just one moment, she saw a dark shape moving across a distant peak. It was moving so fast that it was almost a blur. But Sarah knew She knew it was Ghost. Ghost was leading a group of wild mustangs. The foal had grown into a beautiful young horse, and it was running free across the mountains, exactly as it was meant to be. Ghost did not see Sarah. The foal did not stop. Ghost just kept running, running toward freedom, running toward the wildlife that was waiting. Sarah did not cry. She did not call out. She just stood there in the silence and watched until Ghost disappeared over the mountains. And in that silence, all the words she could never speak aloud lived forever. She had loved Ghost so much that she had set it free. And that was the most beautiful thing a person could ever do. That was what it meant to love without expecting anything back. That was what true love really meant. Sarah turned and walked down the mountain, back toward town, back toward her small room and her simple life. But she was not sad. She was happy, because she knew that Ghost was happy. And sometimes that is enough. Sometimes silence speaks louder than all the words in the world. And in that silence, love lives forever. 5 years had passed since Sarah released Ghost into the mountains. The foal had grown into a magnificent horse, and the stories about this horse had spread across the entire territory like fire spreading through dry grass. Ranchers talked about a wild horse that could run faster than the wind itself. Farmers spoke of a horse that appeared in storms and disappeared like magic. Children in schools heard legends about a beautiful dark horse that led wild mustangs across the highest peaks. Some people said the horse was not real. They said it was just a ghost. They said it was a story that grew bigger and bigger with each telling. But Sarah knew the truth. She knew that Ghost was very real, and she knew that everything people said about that horse was true. The stories had changed the entire region. Ranchers came from far away to try to catch the legendary horse. They brought ropes and trucks and trailers. They brought plans and maps. But every time someone tried to catch the wild horse, the same thing happened. The horse would disappear into the mountains. The horse would vanish like smoke. The horse could not be caught. After a while, people stopped trying to catch Ghost. Instead, they started to protect Ghost. Ranchers would tell each other where they had seen the wild horse, so that the animal could stay away from danger. Hunters would warn each other not to hunt in the mountain passes where Ghost ran. Even the royal family, who had wanted Ghost so badly, gave up trying to find the foal. They realized that some things were more valuable when they were free. Sarah continued her quiet life in the town. She still worked in the general store. She still lived in the small room above the shop. She still had almost no money and no possessions. But she had something that the rich people in the world could never buy. She had a clear conscience. She had peace in her heart. Every evening, Sarah would walk to the edge of town and look toward the mountains. She would stand there in the silence and think about Ghost. She would wonder what the foal was doing. She would imagine Ghost running wild and free across the high peaks. And in her imagination, Ghost was always happy. One day, something unexpected happened. A young girl came into the store where Sarah worked. The girl was about 10 years old, with brown hair and bright eyes. She was holding a drawing that she had made on paper. The drawing was very good. It showed a beautiful dark horse running across mountains, with its mane flying in the wind and its eyes shining with freedom. "Excuse me," the girl said to Sarah. "Do you know anything about the wild horse? The one they call the ghost horse? The one that leads the mustangs?" Sarah's heart began to beat faster. "Why do you want to know?" she asked gently. "Because," the girl said, "I want to write a story about it. I want to tell people about the horse. I want everyone to know that some things are more important than money or power. I want to tell people that true courage means letting go of what you love so that it can be free." Sarah looked at the girl's drawing. She looked at the intelligence in the girl's eyes. She looked at the passion in the girl's face. "That is a very good story to tell," Sarah said quietly. "That is the most important story anyone could tell." "Do you really think so?" the girl asked. "Yes," Sarah said. "I really do." The girl left the store that day, but she came back the next day, and the day after that. She wanted to ask Sarah more questions about the wild horse. She wanted to know what people said about it. She wanted to know what the stories meant. Sarah told the girl everything. She told her about the auction. She told her about how the foal had been forgotten and ignored. She told her about how something broken could become beautiful if it was loved. She told her about how true love means wanting someone's freedom more than wanting them to stay with you. The girl listened to every word. She wrote everything down in a notebook. She drew pictures. She asked more and more questions. By the end of the year, the girl had written a book. It was a book about the wild horse. It was a book about courage and sacrifice and love. It was a book that told the truth about what had really happened, though Sarah's name was not in the story. Sarah wanted it that way. She wanted the story to be about Ghost, not about her. The girl's book became popular. People read it. Children read it. Teachers used it in their schools. The book spread the true meaning of the ghost horse legend. It spread the message that some things are more valuable than money. It spread the message that freedom is worth more than comfort. And everywhere people read that book, they began to understand what Ghost really meant. Ghost was not just a beautiful horse. Ghost was a symbol. Ghost was a symbol of freedom. Ghost was a symbol of courage. Ghost was a symbol of what happens when someone loves something so much that they set it free. 50 years passed. Sarah was now an old woman. She was 85 years old. Her hair was completely gray. Her face was lined with time, but her eyes were still clear. Her heart was still peaceful. She still lived in the same small room above the general store. She had never married again. She had never had children. She had never become rich or famous. But she had something that most people in the world did not have. She had the knowledge that she had done something truly good. She had the knowledge that she had changed the world in a small but important way. People in the town knew who Sarah was. They knew her story. They knew that she was the woman who had released the ghost horse. Some people thought she was foolish. Some people thought she was a hero. Sarah did not care which one they thought. She only cared that she had done what was right. One evening, when Sarah was very old and very tired, she walked to the mountains one last time. She climbed slowly, stopping many times to rest. Her body was weak, but her spirit was strong. She climbed all the way to the high pass where she had released Ghost 50 years ago. She stood there and looked out at the vast landscape of mountains and valleys and wildlands. And in the distance, on a far peak, she saw a shadow moving. It was a dark horse, running with a group of wild mustangs. The horse was older now, but it was still beautiful. It was still powerful. It was still free. Sarah did not know if it was really Ghost. Perhaps it was Ghost's child. Perhaps it was Ghost's grandchild. Perhaps it was just another wild horse that looked like Ghost. It did not matter. The legend was eternal now. The truth of what Ghost meant would never die. Sarah sat down on a rock. She was very tired. She closed her eyes and listened to the wind. The wind carried the sound of hooves running across stone. The wind carried the sound of freedom. And Sarah understood that some legends never end. Some stories never die. Some acts of love echo forever through time. She had set Ghost free. And in doing so, she had set herself free too. She had taught the world what true love means. She had shown that the weakest moment can become the strongest act. She had proven that loyalty and sacrifice can change destiny. When they found Sarah the next morning, she was still sitting on the rock with a peaceful smile on her face. She had died there, looking out at the mountains where her greatest love had run free. But the legend did not die with her. The legend lived on, in books, in stories, in the hearts of people everywhere who learned that true courage means loving something enough to let it go. Some legends are never meant to be caught. They are meant to be set free. And when you set them free, they become eternal. The ghost horse legend would live forever. And so would Sarah's love.